in. Breathing out, I know I am breathing out. In, out.
J'inspire, je sais que j'inspire. J'expire, je sais que j'expire. J'inspire, j'expire.
Aware of the people around me, I breathe in. Listening to the sounds of the people around me, I breathe out. People around me, listening.
Conscient des personnes autour de moi, j'inspire. Conscient des sons que les personnes font autour de moi, j'expire. Conscient des personnes autour de moi, j'inspire. J'écoute les sons, j'expire.
Aware that the fourfold Sangha is here today, I breathe in. Breathing out, I know this is a happy moment. Fourfold Sangha, happy moment.
J'inspire, je sais que la quadruple Sangha est là, aujourd'hui. J'expire, c'est un moment de bonheur. J'inspire. La quadruple sangha. J'expire. Moment de bonheur.
Breathing in, I dwell in the present moment. Breathing out, this is a wonderful moment. Present moment, wonderful moment.
J'inspire. Je demeure dans le moment présent. J'expire. C'est un merveilleux moment. Moment présent, moment merveilleux.
Dear respected Thai, dear Sangha and friends, today is the 13th of December, the year 2020, and we are in the Assembly of Stars Meditation Hall of the Lower Hamlet for the last Dharma talk of the Autumn Rains Retreat. During the past 3 months, every Sunday we have heard teachings on the themes of non-discrimination and anger, and how we can understand our mind and recognize the roots and transform these seeds that lie deep in our individual and collective consciousness. We have practiced coming home to ourself, coming home to the island within ourself with mindful breathing. And we have been able to release the stress and the tension in our body and mind, thus helping to create peace and happiness in us and around us. During sitting meditation and total relaxation, mindful breathing has been a source of nourishment, healing, and transformation for us. The 90 consecutive days of practice have enabled us to enjoy walking meditation. We arrive with every step, and we are aware of beautiful Mother Earth with each step that we make. Each step is healing, each step is nourishing, and each step is freedom. Freedom from our worries and anxieties. We can feel safe and happy with every step. Today we will look at the Sutra on the 8 realizations of great beings. And we will be revisiting briefly some of the teachings given during the last 3 months. This sutra summarizes the teachings and practices that were done during early Buddhism, during the lifetime of the Buddha and for several centuries after his death. And this sutra also contains the understanding and the practices done by the Buddha's disciples as Buddhism developed over the centuries, especially in the 4th century and afterwards. The ideal of the Bodhisattva, the great being, emerges as an example for all who wish to attain liberation from suffering and to help others also attain liberation from their suffering. It is a path leading to awakening and the perfection of wisdom. Key elements of love, compassion, and a great aspiration and vow to help all sentient beings overcome their suffering are found in this sutra. We can see that this sutra helps us understand both the early and the later Buddhist practices and insights. So the Mahayana and the Theravada paths of practice sit comfortably together. And for that reason, Thai wrote, I join my hands and respectfully recite homage to the precious sutra on the 8 realizations, for Thai considered it a special treasure. This sutra was originally in Pali and was a collection of smaller works combined. It was translated from the Pali language into Chinese by a monk, An Shi Cao, and his Vietnamese name was An Thay Cao, who lived at the Youlang Center in southern China during the latter Han Dynasty, the years 140 to 170 AD. We know that An Thay Cao was from Sogdia, as was the father of the first Vietnamese Zen master, Thang Hoi. This area is now northeast Iran. He was a meditation master who was a prince, just like the Buddha, before renouncing the throne to become a monk. He translated also the Anapanasati Sutra, and 2 of his lay disciples went to Master Thang Hoi's center in Yao Chao in southern China. They brought sutras with them that their master had translated. They worked together with Master Thang Hoi to write introductions to the Anapanasati Sutra and other sutras. Venerable Master Thang Hoi and Venerable Master An Thay Cao had mutual respect for one another. The Chinese text of this sutra is found in the Taisho Revised Tripitaka, number 779. It is a well-known and highly respected sutra in Chinese-speaking countries that practice Buddhism. We will begin now with listening to the first realization. The discourse on the 8 realizations of the great beings. Wholeheartedly, day and night, disciples of the awakened one should recite and meditate on the 8 realizations discovered by the great beings. The first realization is the awareness that the world is impermanent. Political regimes are subject to fall. Things composed of the 4 elements are empty, containing within them the seeds of suffering. Human beings are composed of the 5 aggregates and are without a separate self. They are always in the process of change, constantly being born and constantly dying. They are empty of self and without a separate existence. The mind is the source of all confusion, and the body the forest of all unwholesome actions. Meditating on this, you can be released from the round of birth and death. This realization is the longest, for it has many subjects for meditation. Everything is impermanent, and there is nothing permanent. Our bodies are impermanent and always changing. The cells in our body are constantly dying and being replaced by new cells. Our body has the capacity to generate and create new cells in all of the organs, including the brain. When old cells cease to function well and die off, the body creates new cells. There is no separate cell, separate self in ourselves or in our body. Everything manifests the truth of interdependence and interbeing. There is the interbeing nature of all the organs in our body, and they work together in harmony to function beautifully. Another example of impermanence and non-self is when we listen to musicians playing together in a string quartet. They are able to play in perfect unison, and we say that their timing is perfect. They are, so to speak, connected with one another, and no conductor is needed. Another way to understand non-self is to look at the life of ants, bees, and termites. Thai has given teachings illustrating this, that there is no separate self, no sovereign leader or boss in these colonies. They live together harmoniously in cooperation with one another. Every member contributes to the interbeing nature of the whole community. They inter-are with one another without conflict or competition. During this retreat, we learned that our two hands, our two arms, our legs, these parts of our body, also inter-are, and they function together harmoniously without conflict or competition. The sutra says that the mind is a source of confusion. The mind can be confused. I think we've had moments of confusion. I certainly have. So we know the mind can be confused. If we use drugs, drink alcohol, certainly without moderation, it changes the chemistry of the brain and confusion results. Our thinking is confused. Misperceptions occur, often resulting in harm to oneself and others. Attachment to views and ideology is a source of confusion. Fanaticism, intolerance, prejudice, and discrimination are examples of attachment to views and the source of confusion and suffering. When the mind does not understand clearly what thoughts, feelings, or emotions are manifesting in mind consciousness, the result can be speech and actions that are harmful to oneself and others. This realization says that the body is also the forest of unwholesome actions. We understand that unwholesome actions are not guided by the light of the 5 or the 14 mindfulness trainings and other monastic trainings. The trainings are always a torch lighting our path, and without this light, we can easily be lost in the dark forest of confusion and make harmful actions. When we invite the energy of mindfulness to manifest and be present with our mindful breathing and mindful walking, this energy of mindfulness or concentration will help us recognize what is happening in our mind. We will have the opportunity to change our ways of thinking and acting so that we are always guided by the ethics of the mindfulness trainings. Dear friends, let's take a moment now to pause and come back to ourselves and enjoy our breathing as we listen to a sound of the bell. The other subject of the first realization is that political regimes and governments are subject to change. Venerable Master Antekal's version of this is, he wrote, expectation of permanence causes disappointment and not wanting change. We can see this happening in governments when elections are over and the signs of change are present and elements leading to change have manifested. Among some, there is the wish for permanence and no change. We witness a disappointment and resistance to impermanence and change. And this is human. This realization also speaks about impermanence of the human body. The COVID-19 virus is the agent that has helped us wake up to the importance of taking care of our body and health. And the importance of strengthening our immune system and learning ways to handle the stress related to this pandemic. Contact sports involving a ball, such as soccer, football, basketball, have offensive and defensive players and strategy. We may consider the COVID virus as an unrelenting, offensive player. It is determined to continue to penetrate the cell membranes of our body. It has mutated several times and created additional ways of entering the cell wall. So in view of the strong offensive of this virus, the strong offensive attack on our cell from this virus, what we need to do is strengthen our immune system, our defensive capacity. And that involves several things. There's a lot of information available now on the internet that doctors and health professionals are offering on just how to do this. In brief, it entails adapting a healthy lifestyle that involves eating healthy food, getting enough sleep, exercising regularly, cultivating gratitude, engaging in meditation and prayer, and learning ways to handle the inevitable stresses that we encounter in daily life. Mindful breathing is one way that can change the impact of stress on our body's nervous system. Thai has written a gatha for us to use during sitting meditation, and it puts us on the path of reducing and transforming stress into relaxation and ease. Many of you know the gatha. It's in, out, deep, slow, calm, ease, smile, release. Slow, mindful, deep breathing can reverse the physiological impact in response to stress. The body has the system, the parasympathetic nervous system, that creates relaxation and ease and neutralizes, so to speak, the stress response. It's recommended that we train ourselves in slow, mindful breathing, doing it every day, so that when faced with a stressful and threatening situation, automatically we will start the slow, mindful breathing. People have asked the question, how slow is slow? I want to breathe slowly, but how slow is slow? I have tried this, and I want to offer us the opportunity to do it now, is that I breathe in during 4 or 5 seconds, and then I breathe out slowly and gently during 4 and 5 seconds. So I propose we can do that just for a little bit. And it's helpful if you have a clock that makes sounds, the tick-tock, and you can count the seconds while breathing in, and then count the seconds while breathing out. And if you'd like to try it, we'll try it for maybe 3 in and out breaths. And I can say in, out, out, out. That okay? Just for a little bit of practice. And we'll hear a sound of the bell, because we're used to breathing when we hear a sound of the bell. So let's hear a sound of the bell, and we can practice slow, gentle breathing in and out. In, out, you may may have noticed that your breath has become deeper. Perhaps not yet, but if you continue to practice this on your own, you will notice that your breath does become deeper and it's becoming slower. The first realization continues with additional topics. The great beings say that if we remember these important subjects for our daily practice, we can gradually progress towards freedom from suffering of samsara, the cycle of birth and death. The Buddha offered the 5 remembrances to be recited and meditated on each day to learn how to accept impermanence, change, and eventual death, and to be able to overcome the fear and anxiety connected to impermanence. The 5 remembrances are: I am of the nature to grow old. There is no way to escape getting old. I am of the nature to have ill health. There is no way to escape having ill health. I am of the nature to die. There is no way to escape death. All that is dear to me and everyone I love are of the nature to change. There is no way to escape being separated from them. I inherit the results of my actions of body, speech, and mind. My actions are the ground upon which I stand and are my continuation. Another way of understanding how to end the cycle of suffering is to see that the practice of transforming our habit energies, the cycle of habit energies involving our thinking, speaking, and acting, have passed on from generation to generation. This has caused suffering, and this cycle, the cycle of samsara and suffering, can end with us. How do we transform habit energies? We can do this notably with the practices of bare attention, the notice of what is happening in my thinking, what feelings and emotions I have. I stop with the help of mindful breathing to give myself a pause and a chance to not act and not speak. Then I protect any of my 6 sense organs by not looking at or listening to the sensory impression or that object that is watering the seeds of the habit energy that manifests in terms of speech or action. These seeds can be the seeds of desire, of ill will, anger, hatred. Could be any of the seeds. The daily practice of mindful breathing and mindful walking will develop our capacity of being more concentrated. And from these practices, understanding and insight will arise as to the causes of these habit energies. Then we will know what to do to stop nourishing or feeding these causes. Eventually, the habit energy will be transformed into other energies, such as peace, compassion, tolerance, and forgiveness. We're now ready to to learn about the second realization. The second realization is the awareness that more desire brings more suffering. All hardships in daily life arise from greed and desire. Those with little desire and ambition are able to relax, their body and mind free from entanglement. It says that desire and suffering have a connection. That means if desire is accompanied by craving, it usually leads to suffering in some form. There is suffering if our desires are not met. In early Buddhism, restraining our mind and abandoning desires and transforming the seeds of sensual desire was a key to practicing successfully. More desire leads to more suffering. There are 5 kinds of sensual desires based on the 5 senses. They are listed as money, sex, fame, overeating, oversleeping. They are based on the pleasures of the sense organs. But there are some desires Thai has recognized and taught us that are in fact healthy, such as desiring to drink a glass of water on a hot day when we are thirsty. In fact, we feel happy that we have fresh, cool water to drink. With our 6 sense organs, we can desire to be in touch with the beauties of the world around us. These contacts nourish our happiness. There is a verse Thai has written in the Plum Village chanting book called Nourishing Happiness. And one of the lines says, "My eyes look peacefully on the clear blue sky. My ears listen with wonder to the songs of birds." So it depends on the object of our contact and whether we can let go of the contact easily afterwards. This realization ends with the statement that when we have few desires or ambition, we can relax, our body and mind free from entanglement, or enchevêtrement. Ambition has the energy of volition, impelling it on. Volition is one of the 4 nutriments, and it can be very nourishing and healing. However, ambition can have the energy of greed. If it does, it is not an aspiration, but a driving force for success, perhaps for fame, perhaps for power or wealth. Then it is an obstacle. Often we get entangled because of too much ambition. It can involve our work, our careers, and our relationships. The part of our consciousness called the manas consciousness is quite active. We act as an individual, as a separate self. We ignore moderation and we seek pleasure. We forget the interbeing nature of all relationships. So too much ambition keeps us pursuing goals that can lead to suffering. Here we are invited to be free from too much ambition and entanglement in our relationships and be able to relax. What do we mean by entanglement? There was an example I experienced. One day I went to the drying room. In New Hamlet we have a room, a very large room that is heated. And in the winter, when when it's cold and raining, we bring our clean, wet laundry to the drying room and hang up the clothes. So I went to the drying room with my clothes that had just been washed, and I needed one more hanger to finish hanging them up. I saw there was a large box with many hangers. So I reached into the box and I expected to pick up one hanger. But a whole cluster of hangers came up. They came up entangled together. I saw entanglement. They were totally intertwined and attached to one another. Another example of entanglement is when we're cooking spaghetti or rice noodles or migoi. Okay, when we drain the water out and we put the noodles, the pasta on the plate, they're entangled. They don't stretch out side by side next to each other. They are a heap. So, in a sense that described to me, this is entanglement. So we can think of relationships. Am I moving in a direction of entanglement in my relationships? It's especially healing to not have entanglements in our relationships. And we know certainly the 5 mindfulness trainings and the 14 keep us going in a very pure and simple path with our relationships. Another topic in this realization is how to relax. So I'll share just a few things. I think all of you have ways of relaxing, but basically it's to take moments to pause, to breathe and smile. Thai has said, go slowly, breathe and smile. Don't hurry, enjoy the present moment. The healing and relaxing energy of trees and nature are easy ways to relax. Enjoy looking at the beautiful colors of the sunrise and the sunset. Practice lying down on your back with your arms at either side and breathe in slowly. Breathe in and out slowly. To truly relax, stop thinking. Because our thinking is usually about something that happened in the past, or it contains some anticipation or worry about the future. You can listen to chanting or the sounds of nature, the birds, or the waves of the ocean coming on the shore. These are ways of relaxing that involve our senses, and they are nourishing and healing. So think of scheduling at least 10 minutes every day of doing nothing but relaxing. This will create a lot of space and happiness in us. Sitting meditation is an experience of relaxing, and we can continue to enjoy this way of relaxing by sitting just as long as you feel relaxed. Please don't force yourself. Let's take a moment to relax now by listening to a sound of the bell as we breathe in and out, gently and calmly. The third realization is the awareness that the human mind is always searching outside itself and never feels fulfilled. This brings about unwholesome activity. Bodhisattvas, on the other hand, know the value of having few desires. They live simply and peacefully, so they can devote themselves to practicing the way. They regard the realization of perfect understanding to be their only career. This realization introduces us to the great beings, the Bodhisattvas. They always remember the tendency of the human mind is to search for happiness and fulfillment in external objects and entertainment. We have heard from the younger sisters, the younger members, and also the younger friends in our community, that currently our minds are seeking more and more happiness and fulfillment through all that is available on the internet. Our threshold of stimuli of the 6 sense organs is growing and growing. It seems that we need stronger and stronger doses of excitement to feel happy. And yet they find we are not happy because we are searching for external happiness. Thay has given us a solution for all the young people who feel empty inside, who can't find internal happiness. Thay has said, the way out is in. Let us come back to ourselves. Bodhisattvas are opening the path for happiness by inviting us to change our lifestyles, to live simply by coming back to ourselves and living in the present moment. From the Discourse on Love, the Metta Sutra, there is the sentence, he or she who learns how to live simply and happily with senses calmed, without being coveted and carried by the emotions of the majority. This is a way to live simply and happily. Being content with little, being content with what we have, it's already enough. The question is, how can we simplify our lives and taste the simple joys of peace? One person has suggested that we plant vegetables, even a pot on our balcony in the city. Some cities even have community gardens where people can grow vegetables. And even if we grow only one vegetable, we have the joy of watching it grow by taking care of it and being happy when we are with our vegetables. Growing organic vegetables nourishes our body because there are no pesticides and chemicals in it. Recently, our sisters in New Hamlet planted many, many almond trees. These were moments of happiness. Each sister planted a tree, it had her name on it, and she takes care of her tree. She visits her tree, she waters her tree, and she spends a lot of happy moments with her tree. This is how we can create happiness, with simple things. If you have enjoyed traveling in the past, going to different countries, either for work or vacation, or going on retreats, since the pandemic, all of the monastics, we have not been able to go out and be with all of our lay friends in different countries for having retreats together. We have not been able to do that. But there is a way that all of us can pretend that we are going away. And during this time, we will live simply. Everyone may not want to do what I'm going to share, but in fact, I realized we have already done this. For example, when going to the EIAB, European Institute of Applied Buddhism, or Maison de l'Inspire, we have done this. And what it is, imagine that you're going away for a week. Of course, with the pandemic, etc., it's not as easy to do this, but we can dream and imagine. What you do, you take a suitcase, not too large, but not too small, and you put all the things you need for 1 week into the suitcase. Your clothes, your towels, your toiletries, books, paper, everything you need for 1 week into that suitcase. Then live out of that suitcase for 1 week. You can't add anything more to the suitcase. This is how you're going to live simply for 1 week. And you won't be tempted by all the stuff around you in your room or house or apartment. It will be as if you are living in the supermarket, Leclerc or IKEA, and you're surrounded by merchandise. You're just surrounded by stuff, but you have your suitcase. And you're in the middle, you're on an aisle, and you're only going to live from your suitcase. This is how to live simply. You won't be tempted. So, this is how to live simply with few possessions. If you enjoy living simply with few possessions like this, you may do it again for another week, and even extend your little suitcase living for as long as you like. And I bet almost everyone has experienced living out of your backpack, right? In the summer, traveling, you did the same thing. You live from your backpack. So this is the model, so to speak. And this is how we can live simply. The fourth realization is the awareness that indolence or laziness is an obstacle to practice. You must practice diligently to transform unwholesome mental states that bind you. And you must conquer the 4 kinds of Mara in order to free yourself from the prisons of the 5 aggregates and the 3 worlds. So, unwholesome mental formations we will recognize with our practice, and we will not let them grow when they manifest in our mind consciousness. We will escort them back to store consciousness with mindful breathing and the practice of replacing them with thoughts of an opposite nature. Thai calls this changing the CD. And this is one of the practices of diligence. In the Discourse on Love, which is really a wonderful sutra to read and practice when we want to transform negative thoughts of hatred, prejudice, and discrimination that we hold towards others. It produces thoughts of goodwill and compassion and loving kindness to be sent to those with whom we have aversion, and also to all beings in all directions. This is from the Metta Sutra. Let our boundless love pervade the whole universe above, below, and across. Our love will have no obstacles. Our heart will be absolutely free from hatred and enmity. Mara is mentioned in the sutra. So there are 4 kinds of Mara understood as representing obstacles to our spiritual path and enlightenment. They are the unwholesome seeds in store consciousness and all the afflictions which are overwhelming us, such as greed, hatred, and delusion. The sensual pleasures, the 5 skandhas, which are the aggregates of clinging, our body, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness. These lead to the cycle of birth and death. It's samsara. And the 4th aspect of Mara is death. I understood it in terms of the body ceasing to function. There is no more life force or consciousness in the body, and I can't continue to practice in this state. The 3 realms, the 3 worlds mentioned, are the realm of desire and passion, the realm of form without desire and passion, and the realm of formlessness, where there is only mental functioning. Diligence also means continuing to practice with patience and compassion for ourselves, to recognize our attachment to views and those situations when we have narrow-mindedness and can't accept new ideas. It includes our prejudice and discrimination towards others that may have their roots in our ancestors, and also how we have been conditioned by the values of others in society. In addition, the seeds of fear, aversion, and hatred may have been planted by traumatic experiences that we or our parents suffered as a child, or by the suffering transmitted to us by our recent ancestors who experienced the horrors of war and killing, without being able to stop the suffering inflicted on them by those people and the conditions. It also includes the centuries of racial discrimination, creating deep wounds and immense suffering. This practice takes diligence, time, and patience, and is possible with our basic practices of stopping to recognize what negative thought or emotion is manifesting, and then come back to ourselves with compassion and breathe mindfully, or go outside and walk in nature to bring that negative energy back to store consciousness with more understanding of how it manifested and what were the roots or the causes of it coming up at that moment, and then protecting your 6 senses so that the negative seeds will not be watered again or so frequently in the future. There are many other practices involved with right diligence, but I won't go into them now. This discourse is long enough, so I encourage you to read Thay's book, The Heart of the Buddha's Teaching, or other information available. So there are 4 aspects to right diligence, and I will just say briefly is that we don't want to invite the unwholesome seeds to manifest. We don't think negative thoughts, okay? We won't do that. And if a negative thought comes up, we'll help it go back to store consciousness, which is what I've just shared. The other aspect of right diligence is to invite the wholesome, nourishing, and happy seeds to manifest in our store consciousness as much as possible, and keep them there with continued contact with our sense organs, with what is healing, creates happiness, the smiling, being with the Sangha, happy friends. This brings happy seeds up. We try to keep them there as long as possible. So we invite seeds to have wholesome seeds to come up. We try to keep them there as long as possible. So I think briefly that has described the 4 practices of right diligence. Let's enjoy a pause as we come back to ourselves with mindful breathing for the 5th realization. The 5th realization is the awareness that ignorance is the cause of the endless round of birth and death. Bodhisattvas always listen to and learn from others so their understanding and skillful means can develop, and so they can teach living beings and bring them great joy. So this realization brings us back to practicing as a bodhisattva. To be an awakened being, we practice in order to learn and develop understanding. And we can use skillful means to help others experience the joy and happiness that comes when their suffering is transformed. The Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara is our guide. You know, from our chanting book, it says you know how to listen in order to understand. You listen with attention and open-heartedness, without prejudice, without judging or reacting. You know how to listen in order to understand, to hear what is being said and also what is being left unsaid. With the 5th, through the next realizations up to the 8th, we arrive at the shore of Mahayana Buddhism. We have left the shore of early Buddhism, Hinayana Buddhism or Theravada Buddhism, which is reflected more in the teachings and practices of the first 4 realizations. In the next realizations, we're going to develop the aspiration and the capacity to help all living beings experience joy and happiness and bring them to the shore of freedom from suffering. Here is the 6th realization. The 6th realization is the awareness that poverty creates hatred and anger, which creates a vicious cycle of negative thoughts and actions. When practicing generosity, a bodhisattva considers everyone, friends and enemies alike, to be equal. They do not condemn anyone's past wrongdoings or hate even those presently causing harm. this realization seems relevant to the global experience of violence in response to discrimination born from prejudice, inequality, oppression, and wrong views. Certainly the 14 mindfulness trainings of the Order of Interbeing are the light for us to follow these guidelines for right views, right thinking, and right action. The store consciousness, the deepest layer of our mind, is likened to the earth. And like the earth, it contains all kinds of seeds. Seeds of love, compassion, peace, but also the seeds of greed, hatred, violence, and prejudice. What we see and hear in the present moment through our eyes and ears can awaken seeds deep in the store consciousness, and they emerge into the upper level of our mind, and then their energy is recognized as an emotion. Here is a little story based on seeds in store consciousness. It concerns a perception. A woman from a Mediterranean country had invited her friend who lived in Northern Europe to visit her. Her friend had never been to Southern Europe. One day, they took the local country bus to go to town to visit the sights and to do some shopping. A couple came on the bus, sat down, and a few minutes later they began to talk to each other, but in a very, very loud voice. They were really talking together in very, very loud voices. So the visiting friend turned to her hostess and whispered, "Why are they arguing like that in public?" Her friend smiled and said, "They're not arguing. They're just talking to each other. They're having a conversation." Her visiting friend had the perception that they were having an argument because she had heard arguments as a child. And this experience was stored in her, in the depths of her consciousness. So we know that culture is different and styles of communication also different. So it's very good to keep this in mind, so we can have a wider perception, a clearer perception of what we're experiencing and seeing and hearing. Another example of this is if, as a child, your mother spoke angrily at you, or your father was stern and gave orders when he spoke, then as an adult, if you hear that tone of voice or see a stern look again, that original hurt emerges and is relived with the feelings we had as a child. But now as an adult, we have choices that we didn't have as a child. So we know the present moment contains the past. The past can be transformed in the present moment with understanding, followed by compassion and forgiveness. We do our practice of bare attention. We notice we have an unpleasant feeling. We know how to practice to take care of that feeling with our energy of mindfulness. We breathe and smile to the feeling, and we take good care of it, and we calm that feeling until we feel better and more relaxed and not scared anymore. Then we won't be afraid of that person who is before us in the present moment. Thai has written that compassion is the flower born from understanding, and understanding is the foundation of love. In the Discourse on Love, there is the sentence, "Love knows no obstacles. Our heart will be absolutely free from hatred and enmity." The love of a bodhisattva knows no obstacles, and they do not condemn anyone's past wrongdoings or hate even those presently causing harm. We can continue to develop the mind of love, the mind of a bodhisattva, by developing understanding and compassion for a child growing up in an environment where there was shortage of food, of love, of peace. This could be in any country. It could be at any time in history. It could be any one of us. It could also involve a child growing up in a country that had enough, but had parental neglect. Neglect due to the suffering of their parents, or only one parent. There weren't enough conditions to offer love and consistent parenting. So by listening deeply to others, we understand their suffering connected to poverty and the anger and hatred resulting from injustice and unfair social conditions that have kept them in poverty so long, from generation after generation. We'd like to share a little bit now about the emotion of anger. But before we do this, let's enjoy the sound of the bell, a pause to breathe, come back to ourselves to relax. We can look at anger in terms of its non-anger elements, like we look at a flower in terms of its non-flower elements, the sun, the sunshine, the rain, the earth. Anger very often contains hidden non-anger elements like sadness, grief, despair, fear, helplessness, hopelessness in the hearts of the angry people or the person. It is an energy that is more empowering than sadness or helplessness. And that is why it is more easily and more frequently expressed. It can be the call to leave the pit of despair and hopelessness and rise up and demand change. When anger, hatred, and violence are expressed, it creates fear and the wish to control and stop it by any means whatsoever, sometimes with violent means. And we have witnessed this through the social media and world events in different countries, especially in the last 6 months. Connected to this, we remember Thay's saying that we are co-responsible for everything. We are co-responsible for poverty. The rich nations create poor nations, primarily due to wrong views and greed. The bodhisattvas practice equanimity. They harbor no aversion to those who are suffering from hatred and anger and are doing harmful and unskillful acts, they do not condemn past wrongdoings on the parts of others. In Thai's beautiful poem called Recommendation, there is the line, even though they strike you down with a mountain of hatred and violence, remember, man is not our enemy. Just your anger. The only thing that is worthy of you is compassion, invincible, limitless, unconditional. When we think of Thai Suko Chang Kong's life of service and great compassion, we see them as bodhisattvas truly. Their deep faith in the teachings of the Buddha and the practice of mindful breathing and mindful walking, and their mindfulness practices in creating sanghas have the elements of true bodhisattva practice. And in the Nourishing Happiness verse, there is the line, with kind spiritual friends, I am on the path of goodness, illumined by the light of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. The same verse has the Bodhisattva vow, I vow to look with the eyes of love and a heart of understanding. I vow to listen with a clear mind and ears of compassion, bringing peace and joy into the lives of others to lighten and alleviate the suffering of living beings. There's another practice for transforming anger, and I will mention it, and that's found in the sutra on 5 ways of putting an end to anger. And it gives us ways to change our perceptions and to look deeply when there is anger. For example, if someone's actions are not kind, but their words are kind, we don't remember only their unkind actions or dwell on their unskillful actions. Instead, we reflect and pay attention to and acknowledge their words are kind. And likewise, if someone's words are not kind, but their actions are kind, we don't spend a lot of time thinking of their unkind words, but we pay more attention to their good actions. If neither their words nor actions are kind, then we look for some goodness in them. And when we see the little goodness, then that helps us let go of our anger towards them. If we look and find, in fact, they don't have goodness, you can't find any goodness in this person, well, then we know this person's in a very desperate situation, and we need to help them. Without our help, or someone's help, they can't go on. So bodhisattvas can remember many practices related to anger and negative thoughts of the 6th realization and be able to help. The 6th realization contains a lot, and we thought it was very relevant to the events in the world during the past 6 months. So let's hear a sound of the bell before the 7th realization. We're getting close. There are only 8, and we're going to share about the 7th, and then there'll be the conclusion. It's been a lot. I realize there's been a lot of content on the board, on the computer. You put a lot on the board. So, but thank you for your patience. We'll hear a sound of the bell. The seventh realization is the awareness that the 5 categories of sensual desire, money, sex, fame, overeating and oversleeping, lead to problems. Although you are in the world, try not to be caught in worldly matters. A monk, for example, has in his possession only 3 robes and 1 bowl. And now with the COVID pandemic, we all have a mask. Including monastics. He lives simply in order to practice the way. His precepts keep him free of attachment to worldly things, and he treats everyone equally and with compassion. So the image we can use for knowing how to be in the world or the mud and not be caught or stained by the mud is to look at the lotus flower. Just as a lotus lives in the pond with lots of water and lots of mud, the lotus keeps her beauty, her simplicity and her purity. So we can live in society like that, like a lotus living in her pond with other lotuses, remembering and choosing to practice any of the 8 realizations in order to offer happiness and beauty to the world. So let us have another sound of the bell and we'll read the 8th realization. The 8th realization is the awareness that the fire of birth and death is raging, causing endless suffering everywhere. Take the great vow to help all beings, to suffer with all beings, and to guide all beings to the realm of great joy. The cycle of samsara, the cycle of repeated births and deaths, and the ongoing suffering that is part of this cycle is likened to a great fire out of control which cannot be stopped. So the way out of suffering we know is our awareness and practice of the 4 Noble Truths and the 8-fold Noble Path of right practices. The Bodhisattvas know the 4 Noble Truths, they practice the 4 Noble Truths, and they practice the 8-fold Path of right practices, which are right view, right thinking, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right diligence, right mindfulness, right concentration. So these are the ways out of suffering, the ways of putting out the fire of samsara, of birth and death. Bodhisattvas have real confidence and faith in the practice. And we also develop this confidence and faith in the practice. So we continue to practice with diligence, no longer lazy. We nourish our wholesome seeds. We don't let the unwholesome seeds grow strong and develop to a point where it's too hard to transform them. Bodhisattvas know how to transform anger and hatred to love and compassion. So the Bodhisattvas develop the 5 spiritual powers: faith, diligence, mindfulness, concentration, and insight. To know that their bodhicitta, this fire of the mind of love, is a stronger fire that gives them great zeal and determination to make the great vow to help all beings. The bodhisattvas also practice the 6 paramitas, which are the precepts, dana, generosity, the precepts, diligent effort, patience, inclusiveness, and endurance together, concentration and understanding, or prajna. The discourse on love is their companion wherever they go, and their spiritual friend guiding their practice to offer love and peace to the world. In the nourishing happiness verse, there is the bodhisattva vow. Practicing the actions of a bodhisattva, I vow to look with eyes of love and a heart of understanding. I vow to listen with a clear mind and ears of compassion, bringing peace and joy into the lives of others, to lighten and alleviate the suffering of living beings. There's another bodhisattva whom we know, it's Kshitigarbha, the bodhisattva who is fearless and persevering in his vow to be present where there is suffering, darkness, and oppression and despair. This bodhisattva is our inspiration to understand and practice like him, to bring light, hope, relief to those who suffer. We inter-are with those who suffer, and we accept their suffering as ours. With our solid faith in the practice and determination, we can help others to practice to transform their suffering into joy. This realization also is the call to activism, to protect the earth and all species. When we see the impermanent and interdependent nature of all phenomena, we will not be enslaved by the cycle of birth and death. We understand birth and death in terms of manifestation. When conditions are sufficient, there is manifestation of life. And when conditions are no longer sufficient, there is the cessation of life. The Buddha said, this is because that is. This is like this because that is like that. Everything manifests due to the law of interdependent origination. So Thai has written, what is death? It is simply the cessation of manifestation followed by other forms of manifestation. All phenomena are like this. There is no birth and death. When conditions are sufficient, there is life. When conditions are no longer sufficient, life ceases, the manifestation ends. From the Discourse on Love, there is the sentence, free from wrong views, greed and sensual desires, living in beauty and realizing perfect understanding, those who practice boundless love will certainly transcend birth and death. Shall we have another bell? In the chanting book, there is a bell after every realization. And please excuse me, I forgot to have us breathe between each realization. but we're having this pause now. Here is the conclusion to the sutra. These 8 realizations are the discoveries of great beings, Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, who have practiced diligently the way of understanding and love. They have sailed the Dharmakaya boat to the shore of Nirvana and have then returned to the ordinary world, free of the 5 sensual desires, their minds and hearts directed toward the noble way. Using these 8 realizations, they help all beings recognize the suffering in the world. If disciples of the Buddha recite and meditate on these 8 realizations, they will put an end to countless misunderstandings and difficulties and progress toward enlightenment, leaving behind the world of birth and death, dwelling forever in peace. We are approaching the shore. We see it in the distance, and the Dharmakaya boat containing the living Dharma, which is our practice, is bringing us closer and closer to the shore of freedom, freedom from our afflictions, from our suffering. It is the shore of great understanding, compassion, and peace. Nirvana is the best shore to arrive at, the shore of freedom, the ultimate dimension, free from desires, ideas, concepts, free from the fear of birth and death. And it is the shore of peace. The Dharmakaya boat is also, at the same time, the Sanghakaya boat. They inter-are. We are practicing the Dharma together with our Sangha and with our communities and congregations, and our awakening is collective. Our understanding and compassion are collective because we inter-are. Based on where we are in our practice, we may want to name our shore. The shore is the realization of my aspirations. My aspirations may be peace, freedom from afflictions. My aspiration may be happiness, compassion, non-discrimination, realizing no birth, no death, or full enlightenment. You name it. The shore is also the island within myself, where there is enough courage, love, joy, and hope to withstand the storms and strong waves of violence, hatred, and discrimination, manifesting from within and from without. Breathing in, I come back to that island within myself. I discovered that there are beautiful trees within this island. There are clear streams of water, birds, sunshine, and fresh air. Breathing out, I feel safe. I enjoy coming back to this island. The Buddha and I have taught that to have stability and peace, we need to be able to come back to this island within ourselves. when we come back to ourself and take refuge in the inner island, we are protected from the external storms, the lightning and the thunder, which are the violence, hatred, discrimination that are manifesting around us, often without warning. Each step made mindfully with full awareness is the path back to our inner island. The earth is solid beneath our feet. She supports us when we walk mindfully, aware of her presence everywhere. She is this beautiful green planet. She is a refuge for all living species. When we say the words that Thai has used during his walking meditation, I have arrived, I am home, we have arrived and come home to ourself, to our inner island of peace and stability. We have this inner island within us at all times. When we stop and breathe mindfully, we are also returning to our inner island. We return to our body. Our mind comes home to the body, and mind and body enjoy this beautiful inner island that we are creating with our practice of mindfulness, our mindful breathing, and mindful walking. No matter where we go, whether near or far away, our inner island of peace and stability is always there, traveling with us. And we are always courageously traveling together on the path of collective awakening. This is the path of courage, love, and hope. So thank you, dear Thai. Thank you, dear Sangha, and dear friends online for being with us today. And also during the past 3 months, if you've been able to join us for the Dharma talks. I realized this talk was about a sutra and very different from all the other Dharma talks. But I thank you for your listening. Let us continue on this wonderful path, joyfully together, created by the Buddha, the Bodhisattvas of all times, and our teacher Thai. And let us enjoy 3 sounds of the bell, and we'll hear some announcements. Thank you.